From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang in review. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday arrived in Jakarta, Indonesia, to attend the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related summits. In his departure speech, President Marcos said he would use his summit attendance to push Philippine priorities in ASEAN, highlight the country's advocacies in promoting a rules-based international order, including in the South China Sea, protect migrant workers in crisis situations, among others. The chief executive is also expected to hold discussions with other ASEAN leaders to deepen their partnerships and foster cooperation in various fields and sectors.
Once again, I will use this opportunity to advance Philippine priorities in ASEAN and work with our other ASEAN member states, not only in addressing the complex challenges facing the region, but also in pursuing opportunities for ASEAN as an epicentrum of growth. My participation will highlight our advocacies in promoting a rules-based international order, including in the South China Sea, strengthening food security, calling for climate justice, tapping the potential of the digital and creative economies, protecting migrant workers in crisis situations, as well as combating trafficking in persons. The second ASEAN Summit for this year provides a strategic opportunity for ASEAN to deepen its robust partnerships with Australia, Canada, India, China, Japan, Korea, the United States, and the United Nations. We will foster cooperation with these countries in areas such as trade and investment, climate action, food security, clean energy, and maritime cooperation. I will also participate in the ASEAN Plus 3 and East Asia summits, during which we will discuss developments in the South China Sea, the situation in Myanmar, and the conflict in Ukraine, as well as on other major power rivalries. I will also take the opportunity to meet the bilateral partners at the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit to advance cooperation that will benefit our national priorities. As a founding member, ASEAN has always been closely intertwined with Philippine foreign policy. My administration will continue to ensure that our constructive engagements with ASEAN, our dialogue partners, and stakeholders serve our national interests and the well-being of the Filipino people.
The Philippine President is expected to meet with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, Timor-Leste Prime Minister Sanana Guzmao, and Vietnam Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. The 43rd Summit and related summits with the theme ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth, will conclude on September 7th with a handover ceremony of the ASEAN chairmanship from Indonesia to Lao People's Democratic Republic. Established on August 8, 1967, ASEAN is a political and economic union of 10 member states in Southeast Asia, composed of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei Darussalam, Vietnam, Lao PDR, Myanmar, and Cambodia.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Tuesday called on the member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, to put into practice the Declaration on Combating Trafficking in Persons caused by the abuse of technology, as well as community building by highlighting the need to empower the marginalized and the vulnerable. During his intervention at the plenary session, President Marcos emphasized that the Philippines will continue to call for more coordinated efforts to strengthen regional and international cooperation, particularly in mobilizing resources to prevent and combat the abuse of technology in human trafficking. This comes after the President ordered government agencies to boost efforts against human exploitation and as the Interagency Council Against Trafficking tightened rules for Filipinos traveling overseas. In May this year, ASEAN leaders declared their commitment to combating trafficking in persons through the abuse of technology.
Always at the heart of our community building should be our people. We must continue to prepare our people, especially the marginalized and the vulnerable, such as the women and the persons with disabilities in business, for the digital future. The citizens of ASEAN should reskill and upskill to maintain their leading roles in our economies. As a voluntary lead shepherd for the cooperation against trafficking in persons, the Philippines will continue to call for more concerted efforts in intensifying regional and international cooperation, especially in mobilizing resources to prevent and combat the abuse of technology in TIP. We look forward to operationalizing the ASEAN Leaders' Declaration on Combating Trafficking in Persons caused by the abuse of technology.
According to President Marcos, the ASEAN should prioritize improving access to safe and secure digital learning opportunities, fostering digital literacy, and developing transferable skills.
Dateline Malacañang.
On the sidelines of the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related summits on Tuesday, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. participated in a roundtable discussion between the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, or ABAC, Philippines, and ABAC Indonesia at the Sultan Hotel in Jakarta, Indonesia. The discussion focused on topics such as value-added mineral economic partnerships, development of nanopreneurship and small businesses, retail services through franchising, education, and other mutual priorities. Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KADIN, and ABAC Indonesia Chair Arsyad Rashid PM and ABAC Philippines Chair Joey Concepcion delivered their welcome remarks. They also witnessed the signing of several Memoranda of Understanding, or MOUs, on agriculture collaborations and micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, development. On this occasion, Prime Minister Hun Manet of Cambodia joined in to witness the MOU between ABAC Philippines and ABAC Cambodia on the following: mentorship channels for potential agri-tech, food security, agribusiness, and government entities, trade and investment opportunities in rice and other agricultural products and services, enhancing rice research and technology, and strategies to address climate change and sustainable agribusiness environment.
We will integrate our production systems by linking, for example, manufacturing, agriculture, and services, deepening the global value chain's participation, pursuing a more aggressive trade and investment policy, and expanding and diversifying our export, trade, and our investment partners. With strong partnerships, I see many opportunities for ASEAN partner countries and the Philippines to further strengthen our ties in trade and investment. This roundtable meeting is a significant platform to guide this long-standing partnership.
Last May 2023, President Marcos Jr. held a meeting with the ABAC during the ASEAN Leader Summit in Labuan Bajo, Indonesia. In that meeting, he underscored the crucial role of nano-entrepreneurs, a rapidly expanding sector that presents promising opportunities for many Filipinos with the rise of digitalization and e-platforms. The ASEAN economy is predominantly composed of micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs, accounting for 97 to 99% of the region's overall economic makeup.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday called on his fellow Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN state heads not to allow international order to be challenged by any hegemonic ambition in the South China Sea or SCS. In his intervention during the 43rd ASEAN Summit retreat session, the president said that the past will ultimately judge whether the rule of law will prevail. Let's listen to the speech of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. during his intervention at the 43rd ASEAN Summit retreat session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Your Majesty, Excellencies. We gather today at a critical juncture in the history of our region. The global landscape is witnessing unprecedented shifts from the escalation of regional security threats to the transformation of the global economy. As one community, our collective well-being hinges upon our ability to respond to the changing paradigm of our times in a timely and effective manner. In these times of uncertainty, ASEAN should matter more than ever. The significance of ASEAN on the global stage can only be sustained so long as we can demonstrate to the rest of the world that ASEAN continues to be a force for positive change. The first step in that positive change is the promotion and the maintenance of peace. Because as we speak for progress, that progress must be built on a strong foundation of peace. And so let us look at the threats to peace in our region. One test of our relevance is our ability to facilitate a peaceful resolution in Myanmar. We remain firm that the resolution to the Myanmar crisis should be Myanmar-owned and Myanmar-led. We continue to support the efforts of the ASEAN Chair to engage all stakeholders in Myanmar. We reiterate that all efforts in Myanmar should be in line with a 5-point consensus and done in coordination with the Chair of ASEAN. Your Majesty, Excellencies, our vision for the South China Sea is a sea of peace, stability, and prosperity. Today, sadly, this remains a distant reality. For our part, the Philippines will continue to work with all the countries to foster a rules-based international order. We remain committed to the peaceful resolution of disputes in the South China Sea in accordance with international law. We will continue to uphold and exercise freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea in accordance with international law, including, of course, the 1982 UNCLOS. But let me be clear, we do not seek conflict, but it is our duty as citizens and as leaders to always rise to meet any challenge to our sovereignty, to our sovereign rights, and our maritime jurisdictions in the South China Sea. No country would expect any less. No country would do any less. The Philippines firmly rejects misleading narratives that frame the disputes in the South China Sea solely through the lens of strategic competition between two powerful countries. This not only denies us our independence and our agency, but it also disregards our own legitimate interests. We once more call upon all parties for self-restraint on activities that complicate disputes in the South China Sea. We must not undermine regional peace, stability, and security. We cannot emphasize enough that actions, not words, should be the ultimate measure
of our commitment to securing peace and stability in the South China Sea. Anything else simply does not suffice. We therefore seek your support for the operationalization of practical measures such as the ADMM guidelines for maritime interaction, which we envision will be expanded to our external partners in due time. The Philippines is also pleased to have hosted the second ASEAN multilateral naval exercise off Zambales and Bataan, and the 40th meeting of the JWD-DOC in Manila to expedite the negotiations for a substantive and effective code of conduct in the South China Sea. As tensions and mistrust between the great powers escalate, so too does the prospect of miscalculation that threatens to engulf the region with the severest consequences for all of us. It is imperative that we leverage the ASEAN regional architecture to serve as a diplomatic bridge that promises mutual understanding, strategic trust, and peaceful settlement of disputes. History will ultimately judge whether the supremacy of the rule of law prevails, ushering in an era where all nations truly stand as equals, independent and unswayed by any single outside power. The challenge for us remains that we must never allow the international peaceful order to be subjected to the forces of might applied for a hegemonic ambition. The future of peace rests now on how we together face this challenge to that peace. Thank you.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Tuesday received some $22 million worth of investment pledges after meeting with Indonesian investors. The Presidential Communications Office, or PCO, on Wednesday said the pledges were made during the President's meeting with some Philippine trade officials and Indonesian investors at the sidelines of the ongoing 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related summits in Jakarta, Indonesia. PT Vaxindo Satwa Nusantara eyes to work with its Philippine partner, Univet Nutrition and Animal Healthcare Company, or UNAHCO Incorporated Philippines, on veterinary vaccines such as avian influenza vaccine through a $2 million investment this 2023. Publicly listed firm PTWIR Asia TBK also plans to invest some $20 million in the domestic economy until 2028 through its subsidiary PT Mata Nilai Republic, the country's first metaverse company, for the development of augmented reality or AR technology with the use of virtual reality or VR and artificial intelligence or AI. Pacific Salilit Nusantara, or PSN, meanwhile, updated the President about the Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, it signed with WIT Philippines Incorporated in September of 2022 for the launch of a satellite in December this year, a move supporting the government's bid to further improve internet connectivity nationwide. The tie-up calls for the allocation of 13.5 gigabytes per second of bandwidth for the Philippines using the soon-to-be launched satellite. The chief executive, during the meeting with the investors and the Regional Bloc's Business Advisory Council, or BAC, stressed the need for stronger cooperation between Indonesia and the Philippines to enhance business opportunities in several areas. He said increased cooperation is needed in several sectors such as agriculture, energy, digitalization, and supply chain. President Marcos highlighted his administration's goal of developing priority areas that include agriculture and energy. Private sector representatives from the Philippines and the other ASEAN member countries on Tuesday signed an MOU for agriculture cooperation and small business development in line with the regional bloc's economic integration bid. The MOUs, signed for each country by their respective ASEAN BAC representative, are eyed for joint studies and mentorship channels with Filipinos for potential agriculture, agriculture technology, food security, agripreneurship, business models, and value chain development among small, medium, and large farmers, enterprises, and government entities.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday underscored the need for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, to fully comply with the United Nations or UN Security Council resolutions as he expressed concern over its recent surge of intercontinental ballistic missile tests. The president said in his intervention during the 24th Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Republic of Korea, or ASEAN ROC Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia, that he is honored to assess the progress of the ASEAN ROC relations, celebrate shared success, and recommit to a future of mutual growth and cooperation. President Marcos also expressed his appreciation for the ROC's continued support in upholding the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, as he shared concerns on the militarization of reclaimed features, the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, and other coercive activities.
We welcome the enhancing policy dialogue on maritime affairs with the ROK under the initiative to contribute to the overall enhancement of ASEAN-ROK comprehensive security cooperation. We appreciate the ROK's continued support in upholding the UNCLOS as a key pillar of the rules-based international order as the region faces unilateral attempts to change the status quo in its waters. We share concerns on the militarization of reclaimed features, the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, and other coercive activities. We welcome ROK's intention to elevate the relation with ASEAN to a comprehensive strategic partnership. We are optimistic that what we have achieved together in the past decades will quickly be surpassed when relations with ROK are elevated to that of a comprehensive strategic partner of ASEAN.
The Filipino leader also took the opportunity to thank the ROK for its assistance in addressing the massive oil spill in Oriental Mindoro Province last April, as he thanked the government for its contribution to emergency humanitarian assistance for damages caused by recent typhoons. President Marcos also thanked the ROK for the donated 400 metric tons of rice to the Philippines through the ASEAN Plus 3 Emergency Rice Reserve, or APTERR. In terms of the economy, the President emphasized the ASEAN and ROK should continue efforts on ASEAN connectivity and further expand through the effective implementation of ASEAN-ROK economic cooperation projects and programs to enhance supply chain mutual trade. The chief executive also noted the importance of ASEAN's strong partnership with the ROK in preserving biodiversity throughout the years, including the enhanced protection of migratory species and the conservation of their wetland habitats.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday emphasized the need for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and its partners in East Asia to strengthen regional food security mechanisms along with other measures to meet regional challenges. The ASEAN Plus 3 consists of the 10 ASEAN member states of Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Lao People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, including China, Japan, and South Korea. In his intervention during the 26th ASEAN Plus 3 Summit at Jakarta Convention Center, the President said that they must stay united and work together on strengthening food security, climate change mitigation, among others. To ensure food security, President Marcos said, regional mechanisms must be strengthened as well as increase the emergency rice supply of the APT through the ASEAN Plus 3 Emergency Rice Reserve or APTERR. He reiterated the proposal for APT cooperation to consider diversifying APTERR by adding other commodities and staple foods to rice to strengthen food security, poverty alleviation, and eradication of hunger and malnutrition among ASEAN member countries.
Move the APT onwards to ever greater things in both the strategic and economic arenas. We must stay united. We reiterate our proposal for APT cooperation to consider diversifying ACTER by adding other commodities and staple foods to rice to strengthen food security, poverty alleviation, and the eradication of hunger and malnutrition amongst ASEAN member countries. Let us work together in increasing the accessibility of the digital infrastructure and provide opportunities to enhance digital literacy and digital upskilling. Our collaboration must give rise to paradigm-shifting innovation towards a more sustainable economic model where progress and prosperity do not come at the cost of the health of our planet.
Other measures to meet regional challenges include closing the digital divide and unleashing the potential of the digital economy and encouraging the transition to a circular economy. The increasing importance of the digital domain in all the economies will fast-track the growth of micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs as well as nano businesses. In transitioning to a circular economy, APT collaboration must give rise to game-changing innovation towards a more sustainable economic model where progress and prosperity do not come at the cost of the health of the planet. Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, also acting as the coordinator of the Plus 3 countries, were present in the summit and each expressed their full support for and cooperation with the ASEAN.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang on Wednesday evening announced 3 new appointees of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. The President appointed Hans Leo Kakdak as Officer in Charge or OIC of the Department of Migrant Workers or DMW, replacing the late Secretary Susan Toots Ople, who died on August 22nd. Before he was appointed DMW OIC, Kakdak was the department's Undersecretary for Welfare and Foreign Employment. He also served as administrator of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA and the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration or POEA. Also named for a new position is Jennifer Pia Las as chairperson of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples or NCIP. Prior to this new stint, Las was NCIP's Central Mindanao Commissioner. The palace also announced the appointment of Jose Lim IV as Assistant Secretary of the Department of Transportation or DOTR.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Thursday has called on his counterparts in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN to come together through the regional bloc's centrality and universal multilateralism against the unilateral and assertive activities in the South China Sea. In his intervention during the 18th East Asia Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia, the president said that tensions in the South China Sea should not be allowed to further escalate. The Presidential Communications Office, or PCO, said the event was also participated in by, among others, Chinese Premier Li Qiang, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, United States Vice President Kamala Harris. President Marcos said the Philippine government is concerned over consistent actions that are in violation of obligations under international law. The president also stood pat on the government's position against the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels.
Call on ASEAN and our partners to harness our shared interests and rally us into taking joint action, guided by ASEAN centrality and universal multilateralism. We must not allow tensions in the South China Sea to further escalate. In this spirit, and in accordance with the DOC, we continue to urge all parties to exercise self-restraint and refrain from unilateral and assertive activities that would increase tensions in the region, misunderstandings, and miscalculations in the South China Sea. We are concerned over consistent actions that are in violation of obligations under international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS and under the DOC. We must oppose the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels in the South China Sea. We are concerned over illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and the militarization of reclaimed features in the South China Sea. We continue to support freedom of navigation and overflight and the rules-based international order in the South China Sea. We are still committed to defending our sovereignty, our sovereign rights, and the maritime jurisdiction in accordance with UNCLOS. The Philippines has consistently reaffirmed our support for the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, especially of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence, with respect to the conflict in Ukraine as well as other areas of concern. The Philippines will always continue to champion an open and inclusive regional order where the rule of law and ASEAN centrality remain the bedrock of an evolving regional architecture.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is optimistic for the stabilization of the country's rice supply following Vietnam's offer for a 5-year importation pact. During the bilateral meeting between the Philippine President and Vietnamese Prime Minister Phan Minh Chinh at the sidelines of the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, Indonesia on Thursday, the Vietnamese official suggested that the importation agreement will be determined by the market. President Marcos welcomed the offer, noting the volatility in rice supply, a staple food in the country. The chief executive said that the materialization of the agreement will stabilize the situation, not only for the Philippines but the region. In 2008, the Philippines and Vietnam inked a Memorandum of Agreement or MOA for the sale of up to 1.5 million metric tons of Vietnamese rice from 2008 to 2010. However, the Philippines Rice Terrification Act or Republic Act or RA 110203 was enacted in March of 2019, and this allowed commercial importation by adopting the general tariff rule and removed the quantitative restrictions. although the said law prevented a government-to-government rice importation arrangement. Around 90% of imported rice in the domestic economy still comes from Vietnam. The Presidential Communications Office, or PCO, said some 1.5 million tons of rice worth $772.4 million was imported from Vietnam as of last May. It said President Marcos also raised a possibility of a fishery and maritime cooperation between the two countries because the agreement that the Philippines suggested should not limit itself only to security and defense issues, but also on the fishing rights.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Thursday evening arrived in the country following his attendance in the 43rd Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related summits in Jakarta. In a video statement before leaving Indonesia, the president reported a fruitful outcome of his participation in the 43rd ASEAN Summit and related summits in Jakarta, Indonesia, where he advanced the country's interest in the regional gathering. The chief executive said he participated in 12 leaders-level meetings, including with Australia, Canada, China, India, Japan, the Republic of Korea, the United States, and the United Nations. President Marcos also said that ASEAN member states and some external partners highlighted the importance of a rules-based international order. Let's listen to the report of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
The 43rd ASEAN Summit and related summits demonstrated that countries around the region are committed to regional cooperation and multilateralism, but remain challenged in promoting peace, security, stability, and prosperity in the region. I was able to participate in 12 leaders-level meetings, including with Australia, Canada, China, India, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the United States and the United Nations. In these meetings, I promoted and highlighted key interests of ASEAN, such as food and energy security, migrant workers' protection, climate change, and digital transformation, issues that are of strategic importance to the Philippines. Fellow ASEAN member states and some external partners highlighted the importance of a rules-based international order. They also maintained that ASEAN is a competitive and integrated regional economy underpinned by the principle of centrality. The Philippines championed efforts to immediately operationalize guidelines in protecting migrant workers and family members in crisis situations, as well as combating trafficking in persons. I participated in the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit with ASEAN member states and China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea, where we discussed areas of cooperation such as food security, climate change, the digital economy, amongst other things. I also attended the East Asia Summit, which is the premier leaders-led forum on broad, strategic, political, and economic issues of common interest and concern. We discussed regional and international issues, during which I emphasized the importance of a rules-based international order, especially in the disputes in the South China Sea, inasmuch as they affect not only our nation, but the entire region. I reaffirmed that the Philippines is committed to the peaceful resolution of disputes and called on all countries to continue upholding freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea. This in accordance with international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. We urged all parties to exercise self-restraint and refrain from unilateral and assertive activities that could increase tensions and lead to misunderstandings and miscalculations in the South China Sea. We also discussed significant regional and global issues, including the situation in Myanmar, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and the conflict in Ukraine, amongst other crisis areas. I met on a bilateral level the leaders of Cambodia, Canada, Cook Islands, India, Republic of Korea, and Vietnam, as well as with the president of the World Bank Group, where we had a robust and candid and very productive discussion. I also held informal talks with the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris on strengthening cooperation in key areas of mutual interest. On the sidelines of the summit, I met with top executives of select Indonesian companies who are looking at the Philippines to further expand their presence. We come home with $22 million in investment commitments in areas crucial for our economic recovery efforts, such as agriculture and digital economy. I met again with one company which I had dialogues with during my state visit to Indonesia last year, and they updated us on the progress of their investment commitment. This is a clear testament that together we can make it happen in the Philippines. I also witnessed the signing of the Philippines-Republic of Korea Free Trade Agreement, which clearly demonstrates the shared commitment of both countries to their mutual economic growth and development. The FTA will strengthen our bilateral trade and investment relations with the Republic of Korea, especially as it generates jobs and contributes to the Philippines' value proposition as an ideal regional hub for smart and sustainable investments. The signing of the FTA is a testament to the realization of the many opportunities for complementation and collaboration between the Philippines and South Korea, and an even greater milestone for our economic friendship. Finally, following consultations among ASEAN member states, I am pleased to announce that the Philippines will chair ASEAN in 2026 instead of 2027. As a founding member of ASEAN, we stepped up to this role to ensure the continuity of our progress towards a people-oriented, people-centered, inclusive, rules-based ASEAN community. I thank our gracious host, and I congratulate President Widodo for his very able stewardship as chair of ASEAN this year, and for making ASEAN as important as it ever has been. I also thank them for their very warm hospitality to the Philippine delegation, and I look forward to the able leadership of Lao PDR when they host ASEAN in 2024.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippines' unemployment rate in July of 2023 slightly increased to 4.8% from 4.5% in June, but improved from the 5.2% recorded in the same month in 2022. This is equivalent to a 329,000 reduction in the number of individuals who are unemployed. Based on data released by the Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA on Friday, employment rate in July of 2023 was registered at 95.2%. This was higher than the reported rate in July of 2022 at 94.8%, but lower than the estimate in April of 2023 at 95.5%. The number of underemployed persons or employed persons who expressed the desire to have additional hours of work in their present job, or to have an additional job, or to have a new job with longer hours of work was registered at 7.1 million, translating to an underemployment rate of 15.9%. This was higher than the reported rate in July of 2022 of 13.8% and April 2023, which stood at 12.9%. Unemployment rate at the regional level showed that 7 of the 17 regions posted an unemployment rate higher than the national rate of 4.8% in July. These were Region 5 or the Bicol region at 6.2%, Region 4A or Calabarzon at 5.9%, Region 7 or Central Visayas at 5.5%, Region 10 or Northern Mindanao at 5.4%, Region 8 or Eastern Visayas at 5.1%, Region 13 or Caraga at 5.1%, and the National Capital Region or NCR at 4.9%. On the other hand, Region 2 or Cagayan Valley posted the highest employment rate of 96.7% in July. This was followed by Region 11 or the Davao region at 96.5% and Region 12 or Soc-Sargen at 96.4%.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Friday morning welcomed Prime Minister Anthony Albanese of the Commonwealth of Australia as the latter embarks on an official visit to the Philippines from the 7th to the 8th of September. Accompanied by the Australian delegation, Prime Minister Albanese is accorded with arrival honors and signed the guest book before proceeding to a tete-a-tete with President Marcos Jr. The two leaders exchanged views on ways to further strengthen priority areas of cooperation between their nations, anchored in regional and international issues. These include defense and security, trade, economic development, and maritime cooperation, among others. After the bilateral meeting, President Marcos and Prime Minister Albanese witnessed their respective delegations exchange documents covering a wide array of agreements in areas of mutual commitment, anchored in further strengthening collaboration between the Philippines and Australia. Thereafter, President Marcos Jr. and Prime Minister Albanese delivered their remarks in a joint press statement. This is the first visit of an Australian Prime Minister to the Philippines since 2003. The two countries celebrated 75 years of long-standing bilateral relationship and diplomatic ties in 2021. Let's listen to the joint statement of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Prime Minister Albanese and I have engaged in comprehensive discussions during our bilateral meeting, which reaffirmed our shared commitment to peace, security, and the development in our region. Our talks covered a wide range of topics, from defense and security cooperation to economic and trade relations, from maritime affairs to sustainable developmental goals. It is heartening to find that our visions for the future are quite closely aligned, and our goals for regional stability and prosperity resonate strongly. Both the Prime Minister and I acknowledge that our shared values, the democratic principles and mutual respect for international law, have been instrumental in fostering a strong partnership. Our commitment to these ideals has guided our path forward as we address the complex challenges facing our region and the world at large. We also recognize the importance of a stable and secure environment that benefits not only our own citizens, but also contributes to the greater global good. The Philippines and Australia share a long history of cooperation and an even longer history of friendship. And it is fitting that we gather here today to commemorate the elevation of our relations from a comprehensive partnership to a strategic partnership, a very, very important development for us both. This signing of the Joint Declaration on Strategic Partnership signals our mutual commitment to deepening collaboration across a spectrum of areas that are vital to both our country's growth and prosperity. Furthermore, the agreements signed and witnessed today symbolize our joint determination to enhance our cooperation across various domains. From development to cultural exchanges, these agreements represent a tangible commitment to work together for the betterment of our two nations. I'm confident that these partnerships will drive innovation, create opportunities, and foster deeper understanding between our peoples. As we look ahead, our shared responsibilities as strategic partners become even more profound. The evolving dynamics of our world demand collaboration that is proactive, innovative, and adaptable. By leveraging each other's strengths, we can amplify our collective impact and contribute positively to the challenges and opportunities that lie before us. Let the elevation of our relations to a strategic partnership usher in a brighter and more prosperous future for both our peoples. Thank you, and good day to you all.
Well, thank you, President Marcos, for your very warm welcome here in the Philippines. It is an honour to be on my first visit to the Philippines as Prime Minister and to be the first Australian Prime Minister to conduct a bilateral visit to the Philippines in 20 years. For more than 3/4 of a century, Australia and the Philippines have been bound by strategic trust, shared values and mutual cooperation. Australia is honoured to count Philippines as a close friend and from today, a strategic partner. Our friendship is underpinned by trust and respect as well as a shared vision for the region. On coming into government, I made a commitment to deepen Australia's relationship and engagement with Southeast Asia. Our histories are deeply intertwined and our futures are too. Australia is working with our partners, including, of course, the Philippines, to shape a region where sovereignty is upheld and economic cooperation is underpinned by international rules-based trade. A region that is open, stable and prosperous, with ASEAN at its centre. Our economic future is also with Southeast Asia, and we're determined to grow trade and investment for our shared economic prosperity. And just earlier this week in Jakarta at the East Asia Summit, I invested Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, which is aimed at increasing our two-way trade and investment. For the Philippines, the strategy identifies 4 sectors of particular potential: agriculture, education, resources and the green energy transition. And today we've had constructive discussion about how that can occur. Australia is ambitious for what we can achieve with the Philippines and with the region. In that spirit of ambition, President Marcos and I had very constructive meetings this morning, and of course we've signed our new strategic partnership. This elevation is an important symbol of the strength of our relationship and our shared commitment to do more together. We discussed strengthening our cooperation on regional and national security. We agreed to formalise an annual Defence Ministers meeting. Australia works closely with the Philippines to support peace and stability in conflict-affected Mindanao. And I'm pleased to announce today a new 5-year program to help further reduce violent conflict, reintegrate former combatants and improve community development and livelihoods, particularly for women and those in vulnerable situations. The President and I also discussed the importance of people-to-people ties between our two nations. More than 400,000 people of Filipino heritage call Australia home, many of them in my electorate, Mr. President, building strong bonds between our people. These people-to-people links will be further strengthened by the new reciprocal work and holiday visa arrangements which we're announcing today. Educational and institutional links will continue to play a key role in our bilateral relationship. And I am pleased today to announce that we are doubling the number of Australia Awards scholarships available to students from the Philippines. We're also supporting the re-establishment of the Philippines Institute at the Australian National University, which will boost partnerships between Australian and Filipino academic institutions. And I'm pleased that we've signed today a Memorandum of Understanding backed by $4.4 million in Australian funding, focused on collaborative research to assist the Philippines to develop its own national soil health strategy. Working together, I'm confident Australia and the Philippines can rise to meet the new challenges and help to realise our vision of an open, prosperous, peaceful and stable region. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, we would like to invite everyone to come and visit our Facebook page at Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You will be able to hear and view our Filipino and English programs, including news updates here in the Philippines. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang in review. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.